Yeah. That looks way more like that pattern than the shoe.
You heard that any of that information is redacted. We don't know who did the work. It's a giant secret. We know that by the time the FBI gets involved, the profile, the text file that's a snip to use to try to identify somebody is more than twice as big when it gets to the FBI from Othram. We don't know how.
I've got an itch I can't scratch, I'm missing a piece that completes a whole part of me. An open wound start to see. Everybody come here, gather round. Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
Well, I got an interesting Discord question of the day. Mimi D asked, if a 911 call was made because of an unconscious roommate, what did the police say when they showed up to 4 dead bodies? I would think there would be a lot more attention to that. It just seems to be an overlooked point.
We don't hear them particularly stunned, do we?
No.
No, we don't. We really don't. On top of that, now that we keep getting more body cam footage, it seems like the whole entire scenario of that morning got politicized from the beginning because for some reason, and I don't know about you and murders in your town, but it's very rare a college president is on every Zoom call. I'd have to say you might meet with the police and go over what happened and be like, but this is an investigation, President Green. I mean, you can't be really that involved. You shouldn't be standing right next to me. You should be maybe making a statement, stepping aside and letting law enforcement handle it. And that should be all you're doing.
And if you think back to how Morris and Payne, and I always forget the other guy's name, is it Lanier? The agent? How they're like, yeah, and they're trying to not let them know what happens, and that freaking vandal alert goes out. So think about that. They put together, they met, they got with their communications and PR team, they put a vandal alert out within a handful of, like, what, 20 minutes? As they're investigating, already 4 homicides come out. Make that make sense.
It just seems like a total shit show, and the communication was not very good. And it seems like a competing narrative started to take shape immediately between the college and what the cops knew or suspected. And that was problematic. That's why you had them walking back things about the campus is safe. Bet you $1 million the president told them to say that. Then they said, I guess it's not safe. It's targeted. Oh, the house, we mean. The house was targeted. What do you mean the house was targeted? Why that was happening now, I can tell from the police body cam footage, is because every time they would have a press conference or say something, then they would meet up with the president, get a tongue lashing, and go walk something back and create a new something. This is what happens when you're covering things up.
This comes from Booking with B, who's been on the stream a handful of times. I think she does great work. And she did her own experiment on footprints with shoe coverings on, and I will let her explain this.
Oh, let's dive into it. Okay, back to these latent prints and everyone that thinks that maybe he wore shoe covers. Again, one person going in and putting covers on their shoes, whether that be plastic bags, whether that be Ziploc bags, whether that be actual shoe covers, like medical shoe covers. So I did a little experiment. I took my Vans shoe. I went upstairs and got my Vans shoe. I put paint on the bottom of it and I stepped on my kitchen floor. I then took a shoe cover, put it on my Vans shoe, reapplied the paint, and stepped on my kitchen floor again. I want to show you guys that just because you put shoe covers on does not mean that you are not leaving prints. And depending on how much liquid you step in and how much pressure you're putting when you're stepping down, your prints can still show through that shoe cover. That is just to protect your shoe. It's not to not leave prints anywhere. You wear shoe covers to not track anything somewhere. You wear shoe covers to protect your shoe from making contact with whatever surface that you're walking on. So please quit saying he wore shoe covers. Someone wore shoe covers. The one on the left is the Vans shoe print without a shoe cover on it. The shoe print on the right is the Vans shoe print with a protective covering over it, a foot protector. So please, again, explain to me how the solution is that he wore shoe coverings, because I would love to know.
That's super interesting. And that's another thing about this crime scene, that the forensic specialist for the prosecution, even the one with the supplemental reports, I forgot her name, Spector, I think her name was, but she screwed up all the forensic reports because everything was misnumbered. So she was essentially giving conclusions on wrong evidence. And so she basically had to amend her entire report, but didn't amend the conclusion, which is odd to say the least. And when she's addressing Dr. Turvey's reports, it's like she doesn't give any evidence examples. She just says, well, it's still possible. But what's more likely? That there's two assailants based on, you're not addressing his claim that it's more likely there's two assailants, not that it's possible.
But then it brings the timeline in. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Dr. Turvey said it would take hours. Again, that Spectre woman or whatever her name is, for the prosecution, never addressed. Okay, you could say that this is all possible, but then how on this timeline and the cleanup? You can't have it all. You could say that yes, a cleanup is possible, but then you're going to have to extend the timeline. No, you're not. Really? You're not, because where's the bloody shoe prints? Because then Dr. Turvey said, if this is the weapon that it is, the K-bar knife sheath, it's not a sword. You're going to be in close proximity. The bedrooms were a mess. The wounds were over 200 at close proximity. You're going to be covered in blood.
Brandon Rutter had said that there's another creator, I think his name was Murder Metal Mayhem. He said it looks like a lacrosse net, like a lacrosse stick net.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That looks way more like that pattern than the shoe. That I knew, because I just assumed that they were not lying about the fact that that's a Leighton Van shoe print. But now that I'm looking at it really closely for the first time, I noticed those diamonds just seem way too big. Like, how is that a Van shoe print?
And it might get bunched up at the end because of.
I want to see what do we know?
Wow, damn. That's actually
like spot on. And the Vans are horizontal.
That's interesting, to say the least. Okay, so this comes from Danger Zone, and we were talking about the bathtub photo the other day. Did you see that one, Sammy?
No.
So I showed this bathtub photo. Let me pull it up. That talked about how they were hiding little details by messing with the exposure on.
Oh, they pulled an Amber Heard.
What's the Amber Heard? Explain that while I pull that up.
She played with, instead of giving the photos she took supposedly after Johnny abused her, she just gave them copies of edited photos, and she played with the coloring on the photos to make it look like her eye was darker underneath. But all she did is turn up the red, or turn up the, do you know what I mean? Or change the filter. So it made it look like he abused her, but it really didn't. There was no mark.
Right. Well, and so, yeah, that is similar, because in this, a lot of people thought, oh, they used the flash. They probably did. But when you turn the exposure down, look at how dirty the tub is. Like, you can actually see the outline of the branding of the soap. There's a razor back there. So that is interesting.
You're missing a whole ridge almost in the first photo.
It's crazy.
What?
So Danger Zone was playing around with the 1112 footage. And I texted my mods after watching this, and I go, you know how there's that giant ball of light that covers the entire car, and the lights are like, why do the lights look like that? Dude, they turned the exposure way up. That's what they did. That's why people are blurry. That's why it's not moving right. So they played the audio through the two-way intercom potentially, and they turned the shit up on the exposure, because when you watch this, and I have a video after this, but watch this. You can see how the light is the only thing that's going to glow on the front.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's only the whites that glow. And I did my own experiment. Watch. I did this with moving the exposure up and down. Look at that. That's the exposure going up and down. The only thing that gets brighter is the headlights. How easy it is to cover the front of the car, who's driving it, the license plate. Oh, and what about this? If it has fog lamps, you won't be able to see them with the exposure way up, because there's just going to be a giant light ball.
Oh, that makes sense. That's also too why, like, sometimes in those videos, that video in particular, I kept thinking, I'm like, I definitely see some movement from the dumpster, like where the bushes are, going into that house, like a quick run, like somebody's quickly running. And then I could almost see somebody get into the door. And then I'm like, but why? They made it so bright or dark, depending on what's going on in the surveillance video, that it's hard to tell. So I'm going to have to play with that exposure. I kept just trying to slow it down, because I was like, I know I see something running really quick.
Yeah. And the other thing too, when you think back to Mowry and Payne, they did tests with the same. They did tests with the car, with the same bulb, with an SD card, with the server, and so they had time to play around with this.
Yeah, when you said that audio thing, I told you, Rick and I, it blew our minds. I was like, that's what they did. And that's why, by the way, they gave her, I actually, when I watched that video of yours, I went back because I was like, what was this? I know there was this whole rigmarole story about that. And the story for it, if you remember, I kind of forgot part of it was so the neighbor's house has a camera, but they could not get the video off the SS card. It had to be obtained another way. This camera issue is mentioned many times. The neighbor's house captured someone walking to the dumpster, looking outside, no timestamp. Police took the whole camera. Different detective gave a report, basically the same, but a timestamp at 3:20. So there's that one, and then the one with the detective went to the house to retrieve data from the router, ended up having to go through a charter customer service. They were taking their time. The lady messed it up and saved the data on the wrong dates. Like there's all this stuff. Every single piece of surveillance that they got, either they broke it, they compressed it, and something went wrong where the audio is now missing. It's like there's not one piece of audio or video evidence that something didn't happen in it. I can't tell you how many pieces of evidence I went through where I go, oh, they rescrewed, but Ann Taylor wanted that camera. They screwed it back in and broke it. So she couldn't get the physical copy.
Right. That's exactly it. And look at, as I post the quick cuts of the lives the next day, by the way. So if you can't stay for the whole stream, the next day by noon, I post quick cuts. Look at what I used as an intro for my quick cut. This says everything you just said, Sammy.
Do you have any role in verifying the content of the surveillance? No. I'm going to have a few questions about that.
Which is crazy. That's so crazy. The guy that went there, did you verify it? No. Well, I'm going to have a few questions about that.
So, and also she seized on like the fact that, hold on. It said because the original SD card footage lacked embedded timestamps, a detective had to manually sync the video with real-time data later. The problem, Ann Taylor argues, is that a different detective later provided a report with the specific 3:20 a.m. timestamp. That time was essentially assigned by a police officer rather than being a part of the original file. The tampering theory. The defense suggests that this allows the police to nudge the timing of the footage to fit their 16-minute suspect vehicle timeline rather than following where the raw data actually led. Digital alteration during technical steps. Ann Taylor highlighted that because the police could not retrieve the video from the SD card directly, they had to use other ways, including proprietary software or third-party extraction to get the footage. The argument, anytime a file is converted, compressed, or extracted through multiple layers of software, its metadata is altered. Ann Taylor claims the defense did not and never receive the raw original files, only the processed versions, which she argues could have had audio tracks or peripheral details like other cars scrubbed or obscured. And like you said, or you leave the intercom on so that way it's drowning out the environment noise that you want to hear because you're hearing the intercom in sync with the audio that's actually going on from the outside. And like we're seeing here, you could play with the coloring of the video. And oops, we destroyed it. We screwed up. So this is all you get.
Well, as I was messing with this, okay, I caught this frame. Now, this is the sketchy BMW that turns around.
Yeah.
And as I'm playing with the exposure, I don't know about you guys, that looks to have a rather similar back end to the BMW. That would like all the vehicles get blinded by that blight or by the bright ball of light.
Spaceship.
Right? Do you guys see what I'm seeing or no? One's in the chat if you see it a little bit. It looks like the same back end. In my opinion, I see that.
By the way, you play that video of that one creator who specializes in surveillance, and he said, and we were right, Birdie, remember when we first went over that video, we said it looks like the car's not coming in but going out. Like that's not the headlights, those are the tail lights. That's what it looked like to us. They made it seem like it looked like it was coming in, but it was really going out. Well, that guy said we were right. And they purposely blinded the headlights or the lights in general, so it makes it look like it's entering the area, not leaving.
Exactly. And there's no way that you could tell me that this is somehow the back end of an Elantra. And regardless, when you play with the exposure, even if it were taillights, the light on the exposure, the brilliance of it is that it's going to cover up the license plate. It's going to cover up any vehicle body styles. It's going to cover up anybody in the windows, whether there's tint on it or not. And you're going to end up with a giant white ball of light that leaves you having to listen to a noise, which can be manipulated through the intercom.
And then you get just put out a PBB for the wrong years of the vehicle and change it on a whim, because these videos were just so blinding and confusing. We were trying our best, guys, at the Moscow Police Department with the FBI's help, who've done this for years and years and years, but somehow just miscalculated. Anyway, the other thing about this that's also screwed up, like the way that they played with the video footage, is the fact that they had on dash cameras running right outside of Brian Koberger's car, or right outside of his apartment complex, from 11 p.m. to 3:30 in the morning that night, with body cam and dash cams running the entire time for that hit and run accident that they were dealing with in the water main break. So why don't we see a clear image of his car leaving the apartment complex and returning, or whatever? Like, we don't see. Why don't we see his license plate? You guys have the cameras on those dash cams are meant to capture license plates. That's what they're there for. There's so many better cameras from WSU to Moscow that exist, whether it's traffic cams, whether it's college surveillance cameras. There had to have been better footage that should have captured his car and a clear picture of him driving it or the license plate. Yet somehow the only surveillance that exists of his supposed car in this case is some shitty, altered, cherry-picked neighbor camera. Like, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And then also I want to talk about this that people are forgetting about, because if you look at this, I saw this earlier today. Right here, I'm going to start this. Okay. Oops. This is the big TMZ manages to talk out of their ass with the gloves. And look, TMZ, they've had bombshell video. They'll get it first. Don't get me wrong. Okay. A lot of news organizations can do that. But when you choose to do it about somebody wearing gloves, listen to this blew my mind today. Like, this went over my head too. And I'm going to play this clip. It's like 2 minutes. Listen to this. If you haven't seen this, you're going to be mind blown.
The limit in the SE or the sport.
It's an SE.
Was that the better package? Yeah. Yeah. Do they not have that?
I couldn't find it.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's like a huge shortage on cars. It's hard to find cars right now. I've known a couple people that have like ordered the car they wanted and had to wait a year for it to be delivered because they just didn't have it until a year later.
Yeah, sports versions.
Yeah, those are the most popular. They go so fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's your bam. Koberger really, when he bought his vehicle, wanted to get the sport package, but he just couldn't find one. And she went on to tell him how that's the one that everybody wants. But when you look at the key standard features on the 2015 Elantra Sport, standard means they all have them. And you go through their performance, their comfort feature, their technology, and you get to exterior down here. And exterior standard features on the Sport includes headlights with LED accents, fog lights, and side mirror turn signal indicators.
Dude, that is huge. How did nobody pick up on that?
Well, that's really bad. I mean, I would have went after more of the car, especially. I mean, she was correct in pointing out Nicholas Balance, not really saying he was more comfortable with the 2014, right, to 2013, whatever. I don't, but this is huge. They should have watched that surveillance so many times and been like, where are the fog lights? I mean, that smacked us in the face right away. Where are the fog lights for Brian's car? They don't exist, but here are fog lights driving all over the scene.
And
this is not a flipping car.
And that's why they played with the exposure. That's maybe why they did the audio. And you want to know what's even crazier about that is you want to talk about a summary of this entire case. And I'm not just trying to put TMZ on blast. If anything, I'm going to flip that and I'm going to give the community a pat on the back, specifically Christy, MF Chaos, getting that video, them using it on TMZ, and then nobody in the mainstream paying attention to what Brian Koberger actually freaking says, which is that I got the SE package. I wanted the sports package, and nobody in the mainstream took the time to go and look it up. Shout out to Chrissy's Chaos. Shout out to Jamboree for looking that up. Honestly, this is why the internet is undefeated. It might be taking us a long time this time, but we are going to figure it out.
We are. I'm determined. We don't give up. Also, you know what's interesting is Brian went about his everyday life before and after this all happened as if nothing happened. Do you know who didn't? Every single witness or any single person in that area, including the frats, all went home. Jack S went to some cabin. What's his face went on out of the country. That Barachoa, whatever his name is, David B.
Yep.
We have every single person semi linked to this case that just gets out of Dodge immediately. You know who didn't get out of Dodge? Brian Koberger. Brian Koberger was running errands, going to doctor's appointments, getting coffee, going grocery shopping, talking to some bank teller. I mean,
wait, and he's driving the world's most wanted car across the country. It's just a cherry top.
And then they added, don't forget the narrative that they put out. I love how Hitler was mad about people, the Goncalves talking to the press, like direct your anger at the law enforcement leaking to the press that he cleaned his car like a Spartan. When we now see pictures of his car, it looks like mine or yours. Like you see wrappers, you see change, you see dirt. It looks like everybody's car if somebody randomly started taking pictures of it when you're not in there and you're parking at work. It was not cleaned.
No. Look, so again, I want to give you, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get into what you wanted to talk about, but let me just kind of put a cap on this title of Is the Proof Totally Fake? I don't care if it offends you because it's not meant to be offensive. It's a real question. Is the proof that Brian Koberger did this fake? Is it?
Here's what's fake. It's cherry picked and altered.
And it can't survive questioning. It cannot survive questioning.
It's cherry picked and altered. This evidence, the fact that it made it that far before trial, especially when you got, and I think this too, like people always say, oh, the nail in the coffin for why he accepted the plea deal was they didn't let him have the Franks hearing, and then they eliminated the third-party culprit defense. Yeah, that was bad. But I'd say the real thing that drove this plea deal was the expert reports that Ann Taylor was like, what is this? These aren't expert reports. It's basically a copy and paste from AI. It's not even discussing the evidence in the case. It's giving you this like roundabout broad brush about what forensics is or what evidence and blood spatter. Like it's not really talking about the scene itself and the evidence itself. It's not talking about specific fibers. It's not talking about specific blood patterns. It's just giving this generalization, right? I think the second that one forensic report had to be amended, and they screwed that up so badly that they said that the conclusions were erroneous. They said erroneous conclusions because she basically made a complete report on nothing that was actually there because they misnumbered the evidence or whatever they did. And then so she made some amended report. I think that was the moment they knew, oh, this is going to be bad for trial. They are going to cook this woman on the stand. Dylan, oh yeah, she was certainty, everything lined up. Hitler said that. Okay, great. You want to say that now, not give us a Franks hearing, not address our motions in limine and say she's the most reliable witness and everything's fine now that we hear the interviews, which is more egregious. Whatever, great. We'll grill her on cross. Could you imagine how bad this was going to go for the state?
Oh,
honestly.
Dude, I played a clip earlier on my TikTok going back to when we had the custody queens on with the appellate attorney, Ron. And he said, if this is ever going to get to the point where it's going to get to a jury trial, it might be in their best interest to just exonerate him.
Oh, yeah.
For the WSU lawsuit. And that's like mind blowing. Now, I'm going to kind of segue into what I know you want to talk about. So let me finish with this. At what point is this only corruption? Is this only incompetence? Is this only a cover up? Is this only a conspiracy? At what point is it just one of them? At what point is it just powerful parents, or at what point is it just sorority and frats? No, you have to start to ask yourself, those are like small fish in the pond when you get to the federal agencies, the 3-letter agencies, the people that have government backing. I've never once ever heard of a company that went 17 years without making a profit, being Palantir, whose one of their arms is damn near Othram, I would say. Okay. You don't last 17 years unless you have government-backed funding. There's not a fundraising, or you don't raise capital for 17 years showing nothing. And now overnight, damn near become the richest company in the world with decade-long, billions of dollars in government contracts.
I bought stock in that like months before Trump was going to get elected, because I was like, when he picked JD Vance, I was like, how much is Palantir stock? I looked at it was like $22 at the time. I was like, I'm going to buy a bunch of this. Well, good choice.
And now you want to talk about even a bigger level. Sammy was sending me some stuff today that talks about Othram specifically, because Othram's a powerhouse in the making too, if they're not already.
Well, can I get into it?
Yep.
So I was digging through Epstein files on something completely separate, something with Charlie Kirk. Anyway, I came across this interesting Fed interview with the FBI, a special agent interviewing a guy named Charles Johnson. And in the interview, it says, at the beginning of the interview, Johnson expressed concern about what the agents were interested in. Johnson said he wanted to be helpful, but did not want to get tricked into being arrested. He said he may have made mistakes in the past related to Bitcoin, supporting financing of the marijuana business and his taxes, but now did not want to jeopardize his own business because they work with the U.S. government. Johnson also indicated that he had an attorney, and his attorney would be shocked that he was willing to talk to the FBI. Johnson lived in Houston, Texas for the past 3 years. Johnson owned property in Los Angeles, California, where his ex-wife and daughter stayed. Johnson often traveled to Los Angeles and to Washington, D.C. for business. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Johnson hosted dinners in D.C. referred to the rumor mill. Johnson was involved with the companies Othram, which dealt with genetics, and Clearview, which focused on facial recognition. Johnson's facial recognition company partnered with the FBI investigating criminal cases. Johnson worked with the National Security Council, the NSC, to identify Chinese companies practicing unethical tactics like honeypots, bribes, and blackmail. Johnson provided the name of the retired FBI agent, Special Agent Bouma, a reference. Johnson also said he had worked with the CIA. So
let's pause there. Okay, those are big names. They're powerful companies. I put on the screen, I've never once used that Clearview thing at the airport ever. Simply, next time you're going through security at the airport, all you say is, I'd like to refuse that. And they don't question you. Stop getting your facial recognition. Like, stop. I'm sure they got it with your phone.
Don't give your genetic genealogy. Your ancestors are dead. You'll figure it out someday.
Oh my God, dude. It's so crazy. So Othram has ties to people that are some of the most powerful and influential people that are in the Epstein files.
So basically, it said in April of 2020, the FBI Form 302, recently released under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, documents an interview with Charles Chuck Johnson. Johnson discussed his work closely with firms such as Othram and Clearview AI. These alleged partnerships also worked with the FBI and the CIA, and his role as a source for many years with the FBI special agent Jonathan Bouma and the Times of Israel covered this relationship. I'm telling you right now, what are the odds that the guy in the Epstein files who was doing some sort of confidential source, worked with the CIA, worked with the NSA, worked with the FBI, is also a big part of Othram and facial recognition AI? And we're just supposed to shrug our shoulders and be like, eh. Now, if you remember in the story with Othram, they were developing the profile and then the FBI took it over. Well, wouldn't it be weird if Johnson was like helping, or what if the FBI gave him a call and was like, yeah, your company is working on this profile. Can you get that sample for us, or like facilitate us getting that sample without it looking too suspicious? We'll take it from here. I mean, who knows? The guy's in the bag for the spooks. So,
well, it let me just slow my brain down, because what people have to understand is that, how does this tie into the Idaho 4? When Sammy explains what she just did, and you hear out of Ann Taylor's mouth say that Othram, quote unquote, gave up on it, and then it goes to the FBI, and then there's a super secret chain of custody that she can't see. Here's what I
want to not talk about it, by the way, and call it a tip.
Right. Yeah. Treat this as a tip. Here's what I believe happened. I believe that when MPD had sent it to Othram, MPD didn't have the jurisdiction or the power to tell Othram how to handle this past a normal local police department. So technically, Othram had to quit on it, say that they couldn't get it done. The feds swoop in with federal power that can classify whatever they want. They give it back to Othram. Othram then is able to use their super secret chain of custody, hence why they had to use it as a tip.
And
That's
it just
my
so
guess.
happens the person who runs Othram, or like partnered with them, helped start the company or whatever, happens to be a super spook confidential informant.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. And so that makes sense with the IGG. And now you got to ask yourself, Sammy, what's the motivation to do that? Well, I've said many times, they'll never let a tragedy or a crisis go to waste. So they're going to ride the coattails on a bunch of laws. I've said for a long time, there's going to be a Koberger law. I'm going to continue to say that there will be a Koberger law. There will be an IGG law. There's going to be an AI surveillance BS that's already coming. That's going to be justified by using and casting a wide and far, generic broad net to catch everybody in there so they can have their AI systems go through it. But ultimately, I believe that was what the Fed's role was when it came to taking it after Othram couldn't. They gave it back. And they said it's super secret chain of custody.
And then who became the spokesperson for Othram, guys, at CrimeCon? Oh, that's right. The Chapins.
And why do you think that is?
Because I think Ethan's role in this is not being told honestly. We're made to think certain things about. We honestly don't know if this is a vengeance hit for some of the family's members being. We could go, like, I don't like to eliminate anything. If we're going to go the route that it was a drug hit, revenge hit for trafficking in the area, let's say because of the family's parents. By the way, Dylan's stepmom was arrested the week before, I think it was. And Maddie's stepmom was arrested. Xana's mom was arrested. Maddie's dad had charges in and out. They were all in some sort of probation or some sort of court hearings. We're all involved. Then all of a sudden, around the same time, each of these cases, all by the way, in the same county, go poof. And they get these deals that, wow, for a repeat offender, that's kind of great. I mean, I've never seen anything like that, but they just kind of disappear.
It's compliance or it's talking, right? You're singing like a bird. I have a question, and this is open. This is obviously open to everybody in the chat, but also with you, Sammy. Here's what I want to know. Okay. And this is not because I understand people are passionate about who they believe did it. I'm able to look at all of them. And I think that, frats, drug angle, university.
I think it's an all.
But let me say this. I could see all of it. I could see why people feel strongly about them. Let me ask you this, because in my opinion, this question is a tiebreaker. Of the theories that are out there, which theory or theories have the ability to not have chain of custody on a DNA strand? Who would be able to convince at a local level?
It has to be federal.
That's what I'm saying. So who is powerful enough to get that done? Is a local police department?
No.
Is a university?
Why do you think that there was 65 FBI agents assigned to the case right away and only 6 Moscow and like 10 or 15, 14, 15, something like that, Idaho State Police? Like, that seems a little uneven for a state murder. Like, what? Where's all those behavioral analyst reports? What was the FBI doing? Not organizing the tip line that they said that they were doing. So again, they get to hide behind what they did because, it's secret and federal and TUI statute, and we can't bring them in to ask them questions. Even though I think the cops, like Ann Taylor was pointing out during these preliminary hearings, they were signing their names to things that they were just being told what to do by the feds and then saying, okay, I did the CAS Viz report. Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, and let me explain that. Yeah, I agree. And let me explain that point. Because I saw Crop Duster 22 say, well, MPD didn't have the resources. I understand. So that the feds would get involved because they don't have the resources. That's also on a local level. That's not unusual. What I'm trying to say is how many people then would be able to have, right? So MPD is trying to find this, the traces of the DNA. How many people would be able to have the power to say, Don't tell them about the tradecraft. Tell them there's no chain of custody. Use this as a tip, and then they redact everything, and they'll classify it under national security.
Right.
With a one, all on the same page, mainstream media push. The president talks about it. Pam Bondi's talking about the biggest fentanyl bust that happens right up the road from it. And you know what? Let me say this. I'd be curious if that Elantra that crashed in Oregon that's apparently unrelated, is that a sport model? That'd be interesting.
That'd be interesting. We should look into that. Also, how many of these, like, just like that guy is talking to the feds in the Epstein files, but he, nobody else knows that at this point when he's talking to the feds and spilling his guts, who has something to do with Aram and facial recognition AI. How many people do you think the feds have like that who are working in these industries that we don't even know about, or law enforcement or drug gangs? And you have these federal and state task force that are partnering together, like the Quad City Drug Task Force or the other one I mentioned previously. It's lunacy to think that it's not connected. And if this was something that the feds were responsible for, meaning it's their fault this happened because of the way they were handling another case related to some sort of takedown or some sort of operation gone wrong, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah,
go send the sample to this place. Don't put these 94 samples in CODIS. Don't test the mixed DNA on the sheath. Don't test the hand railing. Say it's a high traffic area. Here, subpoena this. Don't go for the timing advance reports. Say that you couldn't get them.
Right. And in addition to that, let's redact the names that could potentially tie everybody together if there is still an ongoing operation. I'm going to not finish with this, but let me say this too. I've wondered for a long time what the hell happened in Idaho that there's 68 terabytes of data on Brian Koberger. 9/11 had 35 terabytes in 30 days. 3.5 million pages of the Jeffrey Epstein files only had 300 gigabytes. Don't give me the BS of high resolution photos when every damn video and audio that we watch in the Idaho 4 was taken with a potato. And then in addition to that, knowing all of the drug busts that went on with the Aryan family and the Sinaloa cartel that went on for 2+ years. Yeah, 2+ years. That could give you 68 terabytes. Am I saying it was a drug hit? No. But am I saying that there's somehow a connection to what happened in that house that would have the need for all of that data to be sifted through? Yes.
And don't forget, much like what's happening with Tyler Robinson, and as I watched one of the hearings, his defense attorney said, they're handing me, I think it was 7 or 10 terabytes, which is equivalent to like millions of pages of evidence. They are doing what they did in the Idaho 4, where they're burying her in data. They're not separating anything. They're not highlighting anything. They're not saying, here's this piece of evidence, here's that piece of evidence. They're just broad swath dumping on this woman, okay? This lawyer of Tyler Robinson's. They did the same thing to Ann Taylor. There's no specificity, even though we hired feds to make it specific in date and timestamp and put this in a nice organized log for you. Oh, wait, that doesn't exist. Whoops. Why were you having all these feds then? What did they do exactly? You can't know. It's secret. By the way, we can't tell you who did it.
Right. And again, that's not to say that there's not people that are involved, but you got to understand, if this, which I believe this is so much bigger than we could ever imagine. I really do. It's so much
terabytes.
Bigger. It's not a joke. That's not child's play. That's huge.
It's a tactic too. It's a needle in a haystack.
Yes.
So then if you say that that's so much evidence, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to say, we can't have a speedy trial. I'm never going to be able to get through this evidence, just like Ann Taylor did. But then what does that mean? Then they're going to say, well, we gave you extra time. You didn't ask for the speedy trial. But sir, there's so much evidence. It's Judge, Your Honor, it's 68 terabytes. I'm a boomer who doesn't know what that means. Yes, you do.
Right.
Yes, you do.
And here's the thing, though. I'm going to also segue off of that last point of the 68 terabytes. It's continued to go up. Okay. So here's what I'm going to say. That doesn't mean that, like, I could be wrong with the takedown of the Aryan family, and I could be wrong with the Sinaloa cartel, and I could be wrong about Donald Trump talking about it and Pam Bondi talking about the largest fentanyl bust in U.S. history. I could be wrong. Here's my point. If somebody that has not been arrested is still under investigation because of ties to powerful people that they have not caught, that would also make sense for the amount of terabytes. And if this investigation was ongoing, this murder happens in the middle of an ongoing investigation. They don't want to burn 3 years of work, 2 years of work. They don't want to burn. Yeah. They don't want to burn undercover still. So for all we know, like people use the term RICO, but it could also just be an ongoing case on somebody that's like way, way, way at the top over the entire Greek life, over the entire Pacific Northwest. Who knows?
I said, well, think about here.
And pause, hang on. If we only have 250 likes, I'm going to crash out. Hive, hit the damn like button, please. That's all that I ask. You know, Sammy and I, we put a lot of work into this.
Blazer.
And it's not, I'm not trying to like beg, but
I'm sitting here reading through like millions of documents for the Epstein files. Like, guys,
hit the damn
let's
like.
go.
Oh, somebody, they must be behind. Okay, 500. Okay, that's still 500 would.
Oh,
that's still less than 50%. So, anyways,
well,
that's
how many are in the live? I can't even tell.
There's over there at one point, like 30 seconds ago, there's like 1,200. Now there's over 1,100. So, but go ahead, finish your point. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. But just think of, so the Epstein files, so big, so many massive connections. We're not even getting a fraction of what I believe really exists. Same with like the JFK files, right? Stuff like that. Why do they do this sort of like protect the information, dump it all at once, and then shield only like a percentage of it? It seems like it's connected to something bigger. Like they're not doing this because they screwed up this murder investigation. Yes, they just screwed up this murder investigation. They put this on a patsy, but I think that's like that's a common thing for the feds. Feds they've done this for a long time, guys. And by the way, not only have they done this for a long time, you think losing 4 people in their books when they're after bigger fish or going for different things. And I don't even necessarily think that means they're doing it to facilitate investigations and get criminals. I think they're doing it more so maybe to protect people, like in a sense, right?
I agree with that.
If they want some factions to succeed in this world, right? Like say this, we want this drug faction to succeed in traffic, not this one, right? Because we know the feds run drugs. I mean, hello, it's well documented. If they really wanted to solve the drug problem, they would solve the drug problem. They don't. Okay,
same thing with so many.
It makes too much money for them.
Right. You could say that about everything. And
human trafficking, same thing.
Homelessness, drug addiction, all of it.
It all becomes a complex, and then they pretend to solve it. They get a bunch of money for an agency and crack down on low-level things. But what I really think it does is that the ones that are making money for them or are working with them or they're able to control, they'll keep in power and they'll help the other rival games eliminate people that they don't want on the board. Right.
Dude.
So when they favor it's same with Al Qaeda, right? Like we were eliminating Al Qaeda in the war on terror. Then all of a sudden in Syria, we're partnering with Al Qaeda. Wait, what?
Right. No, it's crazy.
We create it and then we partner with it when we feel like it.
Well, right. You know, when we feel like it. And I want to go back to that drug addiction thing. So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on. Has anybody ever heard of the story of if you're in the city and you see a black limousine under a bridge to never approach it? Have you heard this?
I mean,
have you heard it or no?
No.
Okay, so this is like I don't know if it's a folktale. I don't know if it's true. Let me know in the chat if you've heard this. Apparently, there's this really rich guy who drives around to random cities and he parks under a bridge and he's in a black limousine. And this guy who ended up surviving this, or one of his buddies didn't survive it, and this other guy got away, told this story, and that's how it got out there. So apparently this guy sits in areas where there's high drug users, and everybody kind of knows and whispers amongst the encampments that guy has a drug that will end your addiction. Like he has access to a drug that cures all addictions. Okay. Now it sounds crazy, but it's like you either flip a coin, you play a card game. And if you lose that game, there's stories of people getting into that limo and never being seen again. There's people that have won it and they get completely clean.
Is this for real?
I've heard it. I don't know.
Okay. So what is
has anybody ever seen a black limo under a bridge in a city? But there's a lot of story. Like if you look it up, like here, I'll Google this right now. Like
it reminds me, I feel like I've seen that in a movie.
I don't know if somebody made a movie
movies always like project what actually happens in real life and they just pretend it's a movie.
Yeah, hang on. Okay. Let me look this up.
Like, by the way, the CIA and the FBI worked with the mafia. I mean, the mafia and the CIA was born out. The CIA and the FBI, or the FBI, was born out of organized crime, essentially. Okay, so they were working with the government. Essentially, they were born out of the government, and then when they wanted to, they crushed them, but only the Italian faction, right? Not the, the one we can't talk about.
Right. Oh, I can't find it now, but I'm trying to pull it up, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard that. But anyways, that was a great chat, Sammy. Thank you so much for coming on to the show this evening. Hive, you guys crushed it as always. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., I'm going to be streaming. Saturday, Mrs. Birdie and I might have a little surprise for you all.
Ooh.
She's got a really fun idea that I think could be fun for Saturday nights. And then
I thought you weren't doing weekends.
No, but Mrs. Birdie has this idea that I think is going to be really fun. Her and I would get to spend some time together on stream. And I think the Hive, honestly, it's right up their alley. She had a great idea.
I'm excited.
And next week on Wednesday, Jeffrey Gentry, a crime scene investigator expert who's done over 4,000 death investigations, is going to be back on the stream for part 2. And he's been sending me some texts. Crazy stuff. I mean, he told me a theory briefly, and it blew my mind. I've never heard it. I've never heard anybody say it. And quite frankly, it makes sense. So stay tuned for that. I will be
super chatting for that one.
So nonetheless, sleep good, everybody. Sammy, you rock. And I will see everybody tomorrow night. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.